Today, a Rolls-Royce is far more than just a luxury car. It is a global symbol of wealth, prestige, craftsmanship, and engineering perfection. From kings and presidents to billionaires and celebrities, owning a Rolls-Royce represents a level of success that very few people ever achieve. Some models are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, while bespoke editions can cost well over $1 million. Despite producing only a limited number of vehicles each year, the company generates billions in revenue and continues to set the benchmark for automotive luxury. But have you ever wondered how the world's most prestigious luxury car brand actually began? Was it founded by a billionaire, a royal family member, or someone born into privilege? Surprisingly, the answer is none of them. More than 160 years ago, in Victorian England, a young boy was born into extreme poverty. He had almost no formal education, lost his father at an early age, and was forced to work as a child simply to help his family survive. While other children dreamed about their future, he was struggling to earn enough money to make it through another day. Yet, hidden beneath those difficult circumstances was an extraordinary passion for engineering and an obsession with perfection that would eventually change the automotive industry forever. That boy was Henry Royce. This is not just a story of a luxury car company. It is the inspiring journey of a poor boy who refused to let poverty define his future, whose relentless pursuit of perfection led to an unlikely partnership with Charles Rolls, and whose vision gave birth to one of the most respected and exclusive brands in history. But success did not come easily. Before Rolls-Royce became the ultimate symbol of luxury, its founders faced poverty, setbacks, heartbreaking losses, and countless challenges that almost destroyed their dream. So, how did an ordinary boy with almost nothing create an extraordinary legacy that still defines luxury more than a century later? To answer that question, we must travel back to where this incredible story first began. For most people, a Rolls-Royce is much more than a car. It is the ultimate symbol of success. A machine built for kings, presidents, billionaires, and the world's most influential people. Every detail, from a hand-stitched leather to the famous Spirit of Ecstasy standing proudly on the bonnet, represents perfection. Every year, despite producing only a few thousand vehicles, Rolls-Royce generates hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, while its parent company continues to strengthen one of the most prestigious luxury automotive brands in the world. In an industry where companies fight to sell as many cars as possible, Rolls-Royce has built its reputation by doing the exact opposite. Producing fewer cars, maintaining absolute exclusivity, and making every customer feel they own something almost impossible to replace. But behind this extraordinary success lies a story that almost nobody knows. When people hear the name Rolls-Royce, they imagine royal families, private estates, and unimaginable wealth. It sounds like a company that must have been created by someone born into privilege, a man surrounded by money, influence, and opportunity. After all, building the world's greatest luxury car should require an extraordinary beginning. But history tells a completely different story. The man who laid the foundation of this legendary company didn't grow up in a palace. He wasn't born into a wealthy business family. He didn't inherit a factory, a fortune, or even a quality education. In fact, there were days when survival itself was the biggest challenge. More than 160 years ago, in a small corner of Victorian England, a boy named Henry Royce entered a world that offered him very little hope. His family struggled financially almost from the beginning. Life was uncertain, opportunities were rare, and every penny mattered. Before most children learned to dream about the future, Henry was learning something much harsher: the price of survival. Childhood for him was not filled with comfort or security. It was filled with responsibility. Then tragedy struck. When Henry was still very young, his father died, leaving the family in an even deeper financial crisis. Suddenly, childhood disappeared overnight. Instead of spending his days in school, Henry was forced to work to help feed his family. He sold newspapers, delivered telegrams, and accepted whatever small jobs he could find. Every coin he earned mattered. Every long day of work reminded him that life would never reward him simply for wishing things were different. Yet something extraordinary was quietly taking shape. While poverty took away his education, it could not take away his curiosity. Henry became fascinated by machines. Whenever he saw an engine, a tool, or a mechanical device, he wanted to understand one simple question: why does it work the way it does? without expensive schools or famous teachers. He began educating himself, reading whenever he could, observing skilled engineers, and learning through relentless practice. Every mistake became a lesson. Every failure became another step toward mastery. Most people in his position would have accepted their circumstances and settled for an ordinary life. Henry refused. Deep inside, he developed an obsession that would define the rest of his life. Not becoming rich, not becoming famous, but build a machine so perfect that nobody could improve them. That obsession would eventually change the automobile industry forever. But Henry still faced one enormous problem. A brilliant idea alone could never build a global company. He had no money, no powerful connections, and no influence. The dream was growing stronger every day, but the road ahead seemed impossible. What Henry didn't know was that somewhere else in England, a wealthy young man with a completely different life was searching for someone exactly like him. Their meeting would not only transform both of their lives, it would give birth to a name that would one day become the greatest symbol of luxury the automotive world had ever seen. For Henry Royce, poverty wasn't just a phase of life. It was a world he had always known. Born in 1863 in the small village of Walton, England, he was the youngest of 5 children in a family that struggled to survive. His father, James Royce, owned a small flour mill, hoping to provide a better future for his family. But running a business required more than hard work. Poor financial decisions and constant economic pressure slowly pushed the family toward disaster. By the time Henry was only 4 years old, everything had collapsed. The family declared bankruptcy, lost nearly everything they owned, and moved to London in search of a fresh start. Instead of finding opportunity, they found even greater hardship. Life in Victorian England was brutally unfair to poor families. There were no safety nets, no government support, and very few opportunities for children born into poverty. Every member of the family had to contribute just to survive. Even at the age of 4, Henry was already working as a bird scarer on nearby farms, earning only a few pennies a week. While other children spent their days playing and learning, Henry's childhood was slowly disappearing. He didn't realize it then, but those difficult years were quietly shaping the mindset that would one day define Rolls-Royce itself. Then, tragedy struck once again. In 1872, Henry's father passed away, leaving the family completely devastated. At only 9 years old, Henry faced a responsibility no child should ever carry. To help support his widowed mother and siblings, he took whatever work he could find. He sold newspapers in the streets, delivered telegrams across London, and worked long hours for very little pay. Every day became a fight for survival. Every meal had to be earned. Most people would have accepted that this was simply their fate. Henry Royce didn't. Instead of allowing hardship to destroy his ambition, he began asking himself a different question. How can I build a better future? The answer didn't come from money. It came from curiosity. Although Henry received almost no formal education, he developed something even more valuable, an unstoppable desire to understand how things worked. Whenever he saw a machine, an engine, or a mechanical tool, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He wanted to know why one design failed while another succeeded. Why some machines broke so easily while others lasted for years. He wasn't just looking at machines. He was studying perfection. Whenever he found free time after exhausting days of work, Henry taught himself mathematics, algebra, electrical engineering, and technical drawing. Without expensive schools or famous professors, books became his teachers, and experience became his classroom. Every mistake taught him something new. Every challenge strengthened his skills. Years later, people would admire Rolls-Royce for its unmatched craftsmanship. Very few realized that its foundation had been built by a young boy who learned engineering not in university, but through determination, sacrifice, and endless self-education. As Henry entered his teenage years, his dedication finally opened a small door of opportunity. He earned an apprenticeship at the Great Northern Railway Works, one of the few places where he could work alongside skilled engineers and experience advanced machinery for the first time. It was exactly where he wanted to be. Every engine he examined and every machine he repaired brought him one step closer to mastering the craft he loved. But just when life finally seemed to be improving, another devastating setback arrived. Henry's family could no longer afford the costs associated with his apprenticeship. After only a few years, he was forced to leave, not because of lack of talent, but because of a lack of money. For many people, that would have been the end of the dream. For Henry Royce, it was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the greatest companies in history are not built by people who have every opportunity. They are built by people who refuse to surrender when opportunity disappears. And soon, Henry would make a decision that would change not only his own life, but the future of the entire automobile industry forever. Leaving the railway apprenticeship was one of the biggest disappointments of Henry Royce's young life. For the second time, poverty had stolen an opportunity that he had earned through talent and hard work. Most people would have accepted defeat and settled for an ordinary career. Henry did the exact opposite. If the world refused to give him an education, he would educate himself. If no company could offer him the future he wanted, he would build it with his own hands. Over the next several years, Henry worked wherever he could. He spent time at a tool-making company in Leeds before joining the electric light and power company in London, where electricity was beginning to transform industries across Britain. It was an exciting period of innovation, and Henry absorbed every lesson he could. He wasn't simply doing his job. He was studying every machine, every design, and every engineering principle that crossed his path. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that true engineering wasn't about making products quickly. It was about making them flawlessly. In 1882, Henry moved once again, this time to Liverpool, where he continued working in electrical engineering. But deep inside, he knew he wasn't meant to spend the rest of his life working for someone else. He dreamed of creating something that carried his own standards of quality. At just 22 years old, he joined forces with fellow engineer Ernest Claremont, and together they founded F. H. Royce and Company. The young company didn't build cars. Not yet. Instead, it manufactured electrical components, such as dynamos, doorbells, and electric cranes, products that demanded precision and reliability. Henry personally inspected every piece that left the workshop. If a product failed to meet his expectations, it was rejected immediately, no matter how much time or money had already been invested. To many people, his standards seemed impossible. To Henry, perfection wasn't a luxury. It was the only acceptable outcome. That mindset slowly earned the company a reputation for exceptional craftsmanship. Customers trusted Royce's products because they lasted longer, worked better, and were built with extraordinary attention to detail. Without realizing it, Henry was laying the foundation for a philosophy that would later define Rolls-Royce itself. Quality before quantity. Then, at the beginning of the 20th century, a new invention began capturing the world's imagination. The automobile. Across Europe, inventors were racing to build machines that could replace horse-drawn carriages. Companies in France and Germany were leading the industry, while Britain's automobile market remained relatively small. Curious to understand this revolutionary technology, Henry purchased a second-hand French de Courville motor car. He hoped to admire it. Instead, he became frustrated. The car constantly suffered from mechanical problems. Parts were unreliable, the engineering lacked precision, and the overall quality disappointed him. While many owners simply accepted these flaws as normal, Henry couldn't ignore them. Every imperfection challenged his engineering instincts. He didn't ask, "How can I repair this car?" He asked a far more dangerous question. "What if I build a better one?" That single thought would change his life forever. Night after night, after finishing his regular work, Henry returned to his workshop. There, surrounded by tools, sketches, and unfinished components, he began designing an automobile unlike anything he had seen before. Every bolt, every gear, and every mechanical detail reflected his obsession with perfection. He wasn't trying to build the fastest car or the cheapest car. He wanted to build the most reliable car in the world. In 1904, after months of relentless effort, Henry completed his first automobile, the Royce 10 horsepower. Quiet, smooth, and remarkably dependable, it immediately stood apart from many of its competitors. Friends, business partners, and early customers were astonished by its quality. Word quickly spread that an unknown engineer from Manchester had built a machine that rivaled the best European automobiles. But Henry still faced one enormous obstacle. He knew how to build exceptional cars. He didn't know how to sell them. Meanwhile, somewhere else in England, a wealthy young entrepreneur named Charles Rolls, was searching for a British-made automobile worthy of a showroom. He had money, influence, and one of the country's first luxury car dealerships. But he couldn't find a manufacturer whose quality matched his ambition. Neither man knew it yet, but fate was about to bring together an engineer obsessed with perfection and a businessman obsessed with opportunity. And when those two worlds collided, the history of luxury automobiles would change forever. Henry Royce's story reminds us of something that the world often forgets. Greatness doesn't begin with wealth, powerful connections, or perfect circumstances. It begins with a vision, relentless determination, and the courage to keep moving forward when every obstacle tells you to give up. A poor boy with almost no education didn't just build a successful company. He created a legacy that continues to define luxury and engineering excellence more than a century later. His journey proves that perfection is never an accident. It is a result of discipline, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to becoming better every single day. If this story inspired you, take a moment to think about the challenges you're facing in your own life. Sometimes, the biggest success stories begin with the smallest opportunities. And if Henry Royce could turn hardship into one of the world's most iconic brands, imagine what persistence and dedication can do for you. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to discover more untold stories behind the world's biggest companies, luxury brands, and business empires, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next documentary. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. What is the biggest lesson you learned from Henry Royce's incredible journey? Share your answer in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.